Burley So. Hello everybody, welcome back. Purified here. Just want to do a quick introduction to a short series that I'm doing with my good buddy Bryan. He had a Serger available that he was fixing for a friend, so we're going to do a short series on what's a Serger, how to thread it, and some basic troubleshooting. I hope you enjoy it. Hello everybody and welcome back to Burley So. I'm your host Purified, and today we're back on location at Bryan's house. He had a Serger that he was going to do some repairs on, so we're lucky enough to be here today. The timing's perfect because I've been getting a lot of comments lately about threading Sergers. I personally don't have one, and the reason why is I was going to buy one, but I ended up getting this instead. Wife's got a lot of projects for me this summer, so I needed to cut wood and not sew as much, but I'll still be doing the video, so don't worry about that. But anyway, so we're gonna dive right in. We've got a Serger video with Bryan. I don't know anything about the machine, so if you can maybe enlighten us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this is actually a flashback for me. These models they're a little older. This is actually a White Superlock 534. I've seen a lot of these. This is actually a pretty solid machine. They have always done a great job whenever I worked on them, and I know a lot about these things. So I had a friend who was having some trouble with it. It jammed up or something. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the problem as it was. She had unthreaded and pulled it all apart, and everything kind of looks okay, but we're going to take a look at it. We're going to learn how to thread it, talk about what a 4-thread overlock is, and how to do some other things like maybe a 3-thread overlock, and just go through some troubleshooting points, because Sergers can be really confusing, and it's really easy to make mistakes, very simple mistakes that it looks catastrophic, but really it just boils down to following a couple steps to get it back up and running most of the time. So with that.
All right, so I've got a question real quick. What's a Serger for? Real basically, I mean, I understand you can do overlocking stitches and stuff like that. What would you need a Serger for?
It cuts and edges fabric all at once, 2 pieces together, creating a seam. Most clothing can be made with a Serger. Even absent of a sewing machine, you could make clothes with a Serger. And you know, the seams inside your shirts or your pants legs, they're all serged. If you flip them open, if you flip your garment inside out, you'll see the chain. And what that does is it creates the seam, the stitch, obviously, to hold it together. And then usually there's a secondary safety stitch in case the first one gives out. And then it also over edges the fabric as it cuts it to prevent it from fraying. So it's actually a pretty handy little machine. There's also some machines that are capable of other more decorative stuff like flat locking, which is like a serge, but flat, and sometimes you don't cut the fabric. There's rolled edges. If you've ever seen, I'm reminded of my mother's placemats at Christmas time. They always had this fine little satiny edge around the perimeter of the little placemat, and it was a rolled edge or a rolled hem. And this machine would be capable of that. You know, you replace the needle plate, and it's special. You use one needle, and you can set some tensions, and you get this nice satiny little decorative finish on the edge of a piece of fabric, which also keeps it from fraying and falling apart. So
some of the things you can do with a normal sewing machine, like my brother, you can do to some degree, but this sounds like it does probably a better job and more specific
for what it does as far as cutting and edging and how efficiently it does that. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could even get attachments for your sewing machine that'll cut while you over edge. But
is it as good as a Serger? Probably
not at all. Not at all.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the machine, Bryan?
All right. Well, this Superlock 534, it's pretty basic 4-thread overlock. Obviously, you have your needles that you see going up and down. The needle tensions. You have your threading path and all your guides here.
Okay, so there's 2 needles.
There's 2 needles on this one because it's a 4-thread. You can run it in 3-thread wide and narrow, I believe.
And that means
You can use either the inner or the outer needle only, or both at the same time. If you're just trying to save thread and you're not and you're just over edging something, 3 threads is probably fine. You know, if it's an actual seam, you might want to use 4. So following that, we have the looper tensions, and the loopers are down below here. I'm going to turn the machine a little bit. So here are your loopers down here. Here's your upper looper that comes peeking out, and the needle is kind of come right behind it when you actually rotate the machine. And then there's a lower looper that it mates with down below. You can kind of see it right here.
Yep.
Going back and forth like this.
Right.
So there are your loopers right there.
Almost like a scissors fashion.
Yeah. This particular machine, it has a front cover so you can access the different threading, and it has a guide right here which you really want to follow. While we're in the looper area, you can also see the knife that goes up and down as you run the machine, and every stitch it cuts a little more fabric. There's an upper and lower component to that, though I often check those for wear. On this model, the stitch length is actually located here under the side cover, and right now it's set to 3, which is about 10-12 stitches per inch. But in a range of 1 to 5, I could adjust it. I just hold this little brown knob here, and then I would twist the hand wheel forward or backward to move between 1 and 5 in this little window here.
Sure.
So there's also a different...
So you wouldn't turn this wheel over here.
I mean,
you would hold that
could,
one.
but honestly, it's like I like to hold the window in front of my eye and then adjust the number.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but it's the same thing at the end of the day. Okay, so when you adjust your stitch length, obviously you're adjusting how much these feeders, the feed dogs, are feeding the fabric through. You can see those little teeth. If I rotate the machine, you'll see them moving back and forth, and that's just like a sewing machine. It's what feeds your fabric through. Some models, like this model, has a D version, a 534D, that has a differential feed, which means you actually get 2 sets of these feed dogs, and you can adjust the ratio of how much the front feed versus the back. Under normal circumstances, you probably want a 1-to-1 so that they both feed at the same rate. But sometimes when you're working with a stretchy fabric, you want to be able to stretch it out while you're making the stitch so that when it relaxes, the stitch is more natural and it's not puckered. So then you would adjust your differential feed in that sense. And also, if you wanted to gather, you could adjust your differential feed in the opposite direction to get sort of a gathering effect.
Which one's the differential
This model
feed?
doesn't have the differential feed, but there's a version of it that does, and a lot of overlocks have differential feed nowadays. A lot of them do. So it's a common feature, really. And that's the only reason I bring it up. So yeah, the foot lifts up just like a normal sewing machines would. You can and sometimes have to remove a presser foot to replace it with a different version, like say for doing a rolled hem, like I discussed earlier. A lot of more modern machines have them where the actual foot plate snaps off of the shank itself, so you don't have to go through this.
How old is this machine, would you say?
I really feel like it was, and I'm probably wrong, and someone might correct me, but it feels like late 80s, 90s.
Would you say they changed much?
Made into the 21st century, I think. And there are versions of this that they kept going to. There was a 734, and some of the other versions eluded me. But there's White has always been known for having awesome sergers.
Oh.
Even the 2000 that I used to work on a lot. They were great machines, and the only reason I saw them is because everybody that used them to death, so I always had to clean them.
Sure.
So that's the basics. Yeah, I mean, you got your spool stand in back, where you obviously mount your spools. On this one, it slides in so you can store it, but and you pull up your spool stand here. Most machines are like that. And the only other thing would be the presser foot pressure dial for how hard the presser foot pushes down on the fabric. something most people would almost never use. And beyond that, we have, of course, a foot control and the power switch. Pretty simple with this machine. So my friend had a problem with this, and I said I'd take a look at it. And honestly, it doesn't look that bad. It seems like she's over-oiled it. The more I touch it, the more oily I get, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It'll accumulate lint more, but it could get on your garment, so you really don't want to over-oil. One drop per moving metal against metal joint is more than enough for 6 months unless you use it a lot. The first thing I don't like about what I have seen, it sounds pretty good. It's got a nice, you hear the needles kind of tinging a little bit. It's because they do kind of glance off of each other just ever so slightly. The tolerances in these machines are extremely tight. What I don't like is she's using universal Schmetz needles, which is, they'll work. They're really close to what's proper. But what she should be using is an HAX1SP. The difference is practically imperceptible, but there is a difference in the size of the eye and the little cutout behind the needle that these machines are banking on. I really don't like the ancient box of Necky needles in here either. Even though technically they probably would work, I think they would cause more trouble than anything. I would throw all of this out and get new needles. So I have 2 new needles for her. This machine uses 1 screw for both needles.
Can you point to where the screw came out?
There's your needle set screw is what it's called.
Alright.
And that's what holds the needles in place. Some machines they'll have thumb screws. Some will have 2 set screws. Some Vikings used little Allen wrench set screws. So it varies.
And you put both needles in at the same time?
At the same time.
So flat to the back?
Flat to the back. Absolutely. And all the way up. I'm holding the needles up against inside the needle bar while I tighten this up. Now, these screws I have to warn, you don't want to over tighten them. I used to replace a lot of these screws because when you over tighten them, these needles are hardened steel, and these set screws are not always, and they'll deform. The tip of the screw will deform, and then suddenly you'll discover it doesn't hold a needle anymore, or it only holds 1. So you don't want to over tighten it. Another thing to notice about Serger is, if you can see this, you might want to get right in there. One needle is lower than the other. Can you see that? The right needle is about 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeters lower than the left needle. And that's on purpose. Almost all machines are like that. There's a rare exception, but they're staggered like that. So, and you want to make sure they're up all the way. If, say, your left needle was even with the right, you're probably going to have skip stitches and other problems.
Huh, that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
So putting in the needle correctly is,
Yeah.
critical.
And that's, and we'll
And
touch
all
on it.
Sergers are like that. They all have one needle that's higher than the other.
Yes. Yeah, and all 4 threads, 4-thread overlocks. Now there are also 5-thread overlocks. They're all the way up to 8 threads. If they're higher than that, I'd be surprised. I don't know.
Okay.
But there's a whole range. But 4-thread is most common. You're going to see that a lot. Okay, so new needles. It really sounds like a dream. So I guess I'm going to thread it. Let's see how do we thread this thing.
So in the interest of time, we're going to end the video here. Join us in probably 2 weeks to continue this series, and we'll take a look at how to thread this. Next week, I'm going to try to get up an Easter video. As always, I hope you enjoyed what you saw. Please leave your comments below. I'm Purified, and thanks for watching Burley So.